the shrieks of winged death, the siren song of destiny, and a hell of a lot of walking. Forget the One Ring. These are the elements that bind the Lord of the Rings together across all three films. Every Lord of the Rings film is filled with a lot of traveling in one form or another. Fan site theonering.net estimates that Frodo walks a painstaking 1,800 miles from his front doorstep at Bag End to the fires of Mount Doom. And that doesn't even factor in the part where the Fellowship splits up and we start tracking each offshoot. We watch our heroes boat down the great river Anduin, ride across the plains of Rohan, fly on the backs of eagles, and otherwise walk, climb, and scramble across dozens of other Middle-earth landscapes.
Mordor. The one place in Middle-earth we don't want to see any closer. The one place we're trying to get to.
Getting from point A to point B isn't just something that happens a lot, it's a central part of the story. In The Fellowship of the Ring, the first primary objective of our heroes is to get Frodo to Rivendell. From there, the poor Hobbit and his friends are tasked with the even longer journey of getting to Mount Doom. No matter what way you slice it, traveling is a huge part of every installment of this story. The Lord of the Rings is overloaded with epic moments. These might be a gigantic dragon-shaped firework, or black riders chasing hobbits throughout the Shire. At other times, the scale increases, like when Pippin lights the beacons of Gondor, or the Ents attack Isengard. Epic battles are also scattered throughout the story, from Helm's Deep to the Pelennor Fields to the Black Gates of Mordor. Though, if there's one element that truly sums up the epicness of Peter Jackson's movies, it has to be the New Zealand landscapes. All three films are filled with gorgeous panoramic shots from the land of the Long White Cloud. The Fellowship of the Ring features a number of mesmerizing visuals as the Fellowship travels south from Rivendell. The Two Towers opens with the stunning peaks of the Misty Mountains. Minas Tirith is shown nestled into a similar southern edifice in The Return of the King. Couple these shots with the right music and you can count on feeling emotional no matter which of the three movies you're watching. It doesn't take long for the emotional roller coaster that is The Lord of the Rings to start pulling on everyone's heartstrings. The emotional beats run throughout the story in many different forms, starting with the warm and fuzzy sentiment of the Shire.
Sam, we're still in the Shire. What could possibly happen?
Frodo!
From there, the comforts of the Hobbit homeland are quickly replaced by the thrill of a high-speed chase to Bree, where soggy, gloomy danger continues to lurk. Before the ring is whisked away toward Mordor, spirits are lifted again when we get a short rest in Rivendell. When Gandalf falls in battle with the Balrog, everyone's spirits are crushed. A visit to Lothlorien arguably rehabilitates those happy feelings again, only for the audience to witness Boromir's death and the breaking of the Fellowship. And that's just the first movie. Every Lord of the Rings entry is riddled with epic highs and devastating lows. It's part of the Tolkien experience. Howard Shore's score for The Lord of the Rings is rightly considered one of the greatest elements of the films. The revered composer received not one, not two, but 3 Academy Awards, not to mention 3 Grammys and 2 BAFTA nominations. Shore's Middle-earth soundtrack is one of the essential ingredients that tie the Lord of the Rings trilogy together. It knits together the 3-part Lord of the Rings story into a single, emotionally uniform experience. The soundtrack is also one of the few standout elements in the less-loved Hobbit trilogy. The score of a film is always important, but there are few greater examples of this than Shore's soundtrack for The Lord of the Rings. It's an iconic part of all 3 movies that moves us to tears, sparks joy, and consistently brings fans to the edge of their seats. The Lord of the Rings may be a story filled with never-ending traveling, but the Fellowship's collective Middle-earth tour is consistently interrupted by one thing in particular: set-piece battles. In the first movie, there are multiple duels, like Aragorn's fight with the Ringwraiths at Weathertop, the Fellowship's tussle with a troll in Moria, and Gandalf's downing of the Balrog on the bridge of Khazad-dûm. In the second installment, we see epic clashes, like those at Helm's Deep and in Ent-ridden Isengard. In the third movie, the set pieces reach a fevered pitch, as battles break out at Minas Tirith, the Pelennor Fields, and even in front of Sauron's own Black Gates. No matter which movie is in the queue, set-piece conflicts are going to show up, and the audience can plan on a steady dose of action as they work their way there and back again across Middle-earth. He may not look it at first glance, or even at second glance, but Frodo is one of the strongest members of the Fellowship. The little halfling holds an inner strength of will that is unrivaled among dwarves, elves, men, and even wizards. It's an inner courage that prompts Gandalf to tell Frodo,
"But you have some strength in you, my dear Hobbit."
And this comes after Frodo arrives at Rivendell, after being chased, stabbed, and then chased again by Black Riders. While Frodo is a spunky little guy, that doesn't mean he's invulnerable. On the contrary, he is steadily tempted by the ring, and eventually becomes so consumed by it that he is unable to willingly destroy it. This inner struggle against the ring drags throughout all three movies, which is why one easy Lord of the Rings staple is seeing Frodo constantly struggling with the temptation to put on the ring. No! In the source material, Tolkien makes it clear that Gandalf isn't interested in leading. He prefers to orchestrate events from behind the scenes. This prompts Saruman in the Fellowship of the Ring to belittle the Grey Wizard by saying, "It has seldom been heard of that Gandalf the Grey sought for aid, one so cunning and so wise, wandering about the lands, and concerning himself in every business, whether it belongs to him or not." In The Return of the King, Denethor harps on this too, when he accuses Gandalf by saying, "Thy hope is to rule in my stead, to stand behind every throne, north, south, or west." While Gandalf's opponents may criticize his activities as backdoor politicking and king-making, they kind of have a point. He's the one that gets Frodo to lead the Shire. He helps set the stage for the Council of Elrond to send the ring to Mordor. He saves Theoden. He rides ahead to protect Minas Tirith. He influences the decision to attack the Black Gate. But the thing is, Gandalf doesn't actually make many of these decisions. He provides information, offers nuggets of wisdom, and gently guides others toward making the right decisions. It's subtle and always done in the name of good, but it doesn't change the fact that Gandalf is tirelessly working behind the scenes throughout all three movies. One of the major changes that Peter Jackson made when adapting the Lord of the Rings books to a shorter cinematic format was to make Aragorn's character a bit more accessible. In the source material, the Ranger enters the story as a hero that is fully aware of and laser-focused on his destiny. In the movie version, Aragorn is anything but certain about his future. He wrestles with his heritage and hesitates to step forward when the time comes. This doesn't just happen in one movie either. It's an ongoing struggle throughout all three films. We first realize he is the exiled Gondorian king when Arwen tries giving him a pep talk. By The Two Towers, he started to hesitantly step into the limelight, particularly when he plays a key role in the defense of Helm's Deep. By The Return of the King, as the title suggests, he finally accepts his role as a defender of the West and one of the primary foes of Sauron. When The Lord of the Rings begins, Saruman has already been walking around Middle-earth in his shriveled wizard body for thousands of years. Even so, it appears that his long life and past experiences haven't toned him down much, quite the opposite. Saruman finds a way to get arrogant and uppity in all three Lord of the Rings movies. In the first film, we see him disrespect Gandalf multiple times, including accusing him of being a pipeweed addict.
"Your love of the halfling's leaf has clearly slowed your mind."
By the second film, in the extended edition, we see him insulting Wormtongue on a regular basis. And when he appears for the last time at the start of the extended edition of The Return of the King, the wizard starts hurling insults and fireballs from the top of his tower. Saruman is a powerful wizard. He even creates a giant army of Uruk-hai to do his bidding. But the power clearly goes straight to his head, making him predictably impudent pretty much every time we see him. There's a lot to love in Peter Jackson's Middle-earth. The adaptation is moving, inspiring, and flat-out gorgeously produced. However, even though all of the ingredients are present to make the recipe a success, that doesn't mean every single element is praiseworthy. On the contrary, there are plenty of nitpicky things to criticize, including some that show up in every single movie. Case in point, the Black Rider's screech. The bone-chilling sound was reportedly created with little more than a couple of plastic cups being rubbed together, along with the real scream of producer and co-writer, and Peter Jackson's wife, Fran Walsh.
And she stood there and she kind of took a deep breath in.
Nevertheless, the sound is terrifying and sends shivers down the spine. The Ringwraith screech is also terribly and overwhelmingly consistent throughout all 3 movies. The Ringwraiths show up early and often, hurting the ears of their enemies and audience alike. It doesn't matter if you're watching Frodo flee from the Shire, Faramir drag his captured hobbits back to Gondor, or Minas Tirith coming under siege. The Ringwraiths are always there, screaming and shrieking and screeching. Gollum plays a critical role in the story. He's equal parts necessary victim and active antagonist. One somewhat odd piece of trivia is that in every Lord of the Rings movie, Gollum actively tracks Frodo. Yes, we see him doing it 3 separate times. When Gollum is first revealed in the Fellowship of the Ring, it's in the Mines of Moria, where he's quietly following the Fellowship. In the Two Towers, the poor wretch is caught tracing Frodo and Sam through the labyrinth of steep hills, known as the Emyn Muil. Once he's seemingly tamed, Gollum leads his captors straight to Shelob's lair. In The Return of the King, he appears to have died, tumbling off a cliff. But presto, he makes a comeback. And what is he doing? Why, tracking down Frodo, of course. The Lord of the Rings can be a sad story. It focuses on the slow decline of the elves and the end of an era that was once beautiful and full of life. And yet, Tolkien always wrote with a sense of hope and with a dash of the unexpected. This led to the author coining the word eucatastrophe, which he personally defined as the sudden happy turn in a story which pierces you with a joy that brings tears, which I argued it is the highest function of fairy stories to produce. The Lord of the Rings is riddled with eucatastrophes. Gandalf's return as the White Wizard is one. Reinforcements arriving as Helm's Deep is about to fall is another. So is the charge of the Rohirrim at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, and the arrival of the Eagles at the Black Gate. One could even argue that Boromir's repentance and heroic death are a form of eucatastrophe, compared to the corruption he was caving into moments before.
I do not know what strength is in my blood, but I swear to you I will not let the White City fall.
There are many predictable things that happen throughout The Lord of the Rings, and a eucatastrophe of one form or another is definitely one of them. It's a happy fact that collectively makes us glad and keeps everyone coming back for more, as it should.